Hello, friends and folks, and welcome back to Neutral Game, your newbie-friendly fighting game podcast. I'm Six, the Crow.
Oh god, this is what you were doing.
This is what I stopped you to be like, wait, I've got a plan for, yes.
Yeah, well, hi, I'm Real Soviet, the Bear, also known as Miodrag. Welcome to the Neutral Game podcast. That was an intro that was completely unscripted, and now everything's off the rails. The rules no longer apply to this episode. And the reason the rules no longer apply to this episode is because we're talking about a retro fighting game which we played online, even though it's a PS1 game without net play, because the wonders of technology.
Wow.
So this name is sadly no longer called Beastorizer. Beastorizer. It's called Bloody Roar 2. Beastorizer was the original name of it in North America only, because Bloody Roar in general was, I guess, not cool enough. But then they changed it for Bloody Roar 2, and it's Bloody Roar 2 and Bloody Roar in general onwards. And it's a game made by Aiding or Raising, which are mostly known for shoot 'em ups they do, or shmups. It was published by Hudson Soft, which eventually got eaten up by Konami and is now part of the menagerie of Konami, which they probably bring back for pachinkos and weird cameos in Bomberman. And it's a game released for the PS1 in 1999. Six, are you familiar with this game?
Until now, I was only aware of it, like, I saw someone playing a demo of it at an EB Games once upon a time, and then you were like, hey, I think this game is good and let's play it, and that was my first time getting hands-on any of the Bloody Roar series.
That's weird, because usually you just try any fighting game, much like me, but I guess I'm the one that just does the digging too deep and too greedily into the past to bring back these cursed objects.
Yeah, I don't do as much emulation, and so it tends to be I have nothing against emulation. It just doesn't tend to be where I spend my time. And so I tend to only play fighting games that I get a hands on a physical copy of. And I just didn't get my hands on a copy of this, so it never came up.
Yeah, I have a PSN copy of this game, so my conscience is clear.
Oh, really? It's on PSN?
I believe at least the first one's on PSN. That's the one I do have. If they had two, I'd buy it.
I'll take a look, because if it's up there, I will purchase it. I like this.
Yeah.
Spoilers, I guess.
But yeah, so I'm familiar somewhat with this game, and this is one of those fighting games that I played a lot, but I never learned. And then, because it doesn't really have an online scene, I never went back to it. And I never got much better at it like I did with a lot of MAME games, because a lot of arcade MAME games are easier to emulate, and a lot of people make their MAME cabinets and play online with Fightcade and whatnot. And this is in the PS1 era, which is kind of weird to get going and find people to play with. But what we did do is we played for around, I'd say, 2.5 hours total in preparation for this, so we apologize if we mess up any details about this game. We're not super knowledgeable about it beyond just, playing it. But what we did use to play this is initially Parsec, where I was hosting and Six was connecting. But it seems like Parsec servers have kind of taken a dive in quality for some reason, so our connection wasn't as great.
Yeah, if I had to guess, I just think probably with the quarantine and lockdown that a lot of people are going through, probably they're seeing a lot more use than they're used to.
Actually, that's a good point. I didn't even think about that. Because last time we went deep dive into Parsec was like a month and a half ago, and then it seemed to be fine. But those games that shall not be named, like Consaden and the Capcom vs. SNK. Actually, that one we can't name. That was good. The other thing we tried now before recording is a emulator called Mednafen. I don't know how you properly pronounce it. We used a guide it's essentially like an emulator that allows netplay and allows PS1 games, and we kind of followed a guide that was made by the TMNT Tournament Fighters Discord, and just ran a different game, which was Bloody Roar, and it seemed to work fine. You said your connection was better than it was in Parsec, right?
Yeah, it seems like what happened was, I mean, what Parsec does, obviously, is that it hosts on your machine, and then the other person sort of like remotes in. And so latency is pretty much all offloaded to the person who's remoting in, because one person is the host, one person is connecting, or more than one person, obviously, is possible.
Mm-hmm.
And what it seemed like Mednafen did was it split the difference, where I felt less latency, but you started to feel more, so it sort of was in the middle there.
Yeah, because like I'm not connecting online to Parsec in terms of like connecting to a match, so I had no latency. I just had the game running. Whereas here we connected to, a shared server and just played with each other.
Right. I was pretty positive on the experience, and also pretty impressed by the list of systems that Mednafen appears to support. That seems like a pretty impressive emulator. So.
Yeah, and then the matches, the set we did seemed alright. Took me a bit to get used to it, but like I'd say it's, on the level of some Arc system works on a not great day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
not like terrible. We have at times had ArcSys like just a real bad time. This is as you say, it's more like one of those ones where it's like, this isn't one of the great days, but this is still playable.
like, yeah, I can like adjust to this.
Mm-hmm.
And disclaimer, I'm in like Northern Europe and Six is in like West Coast. So
it's possible that the internet gets slowed down by smoke, in which case it would be real bad right now.
Oh man, talk about smoke and mirror strategies. Actually, no, I shouldn't joke about that. It's very tragic, as much as the rest of this year. But let's talk about fighting games instead. Bloody Roar is a 3D fighting game where, at first glance, you think, "Oh, this is another Tekken Virtua Fighter clone," but it actually plays much faster and it plays closer to a 2D game. It's not in my opinion, it's not like full on Street Fighter like EX. Like it's not like that type of weird. It's more the speed of an anime fighter, and the 3D plane is only really there for when you roll out of recovery or when a move shoots you like back or forward. But otherwise, the characters have a lot of air, decent juggles, and decent speed in general.
Yeah, I mean, people use the term 2.5D a lot of different ways, which makes it not particularly useful. But I think that is a decent representation. This is 2.5D in the sense that it is the 3D graphics, mostly 2D gameplay with the occasional 3D element.
Yeah. Like if you play the match, your character will be rolling around. Like you won't be like on a straight line. Like you will end up in various parts of the ring, but that's mostly due to the way you're hit or the way you recover, and things like that. There's not really that much focus on sidestepping, or in general like 3D movement, like in say Tekken or Virtua Fighter or Dead or Alive even. Right. I even believe in the options that like sidestepping is an option you have to toggle on if you want it, so the game doesn't seem like it's actually designed for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, and as you mentioned, as a consequence, I think it manages to keep a much faster pace than those other 3D fighters are capable of, because you don't have that additional element. You can just focus on, the 1v1 run at them.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I kind of like that because that means that, like, you can obviously probably on a high level plan for where you want to position yourself and when you want to position the opponent, but you can't really do it on reaction. It's more just like adapting. So like you can get out of the corner if you're in a corner, for example, but you can't like, dodge a charge that easily. You're probably gonna block that charge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it also does have like quarter circle motions and stuff, like a more traditional 2D fighter would.
Yes. But the main mechanic about this game is essentially that characters turn into were critters or were beasties or whatever you want to call them, furries.
Zoanthropes.
Zoanthropes. Yeah, that's like I think zoanthrope is actually like the official like term like in general, but they call them zoanthropes like with an A. Um,
Oh, okay.
whatever. We're beasties. And aside from like a punch, kick, and a throw, which is your standard issue fighting game inputs, the fourth button is actually the beast button, and that's the you know most versatile button in this game, and probably the closest thing to a drive from Blaze Blue, I'd say. So when you press a beast, so you have a gauge aside from your health bar, you have another extra gauge, which is your beast gauge, and at any point, you can press circle if that gauge is yellow. You can press circle, and you can turn into your character's beast form, and each character has a predefined beast form, so it's not like you're picking loadouts or whatever. And then that circle button turns into your beast attack button, so you get like a new range of moves and attacks that are dedicated to that button, and also specials. And you can transform in neutral or when blocking or mid combo as well, and they have different effects. So like if you transform in neutral or in defense, you have kind of pushback. If you transform mid combo, you don't push away the opponent, but instead just continue your combo that you're doing while in beast mode, which is can lead to some like interesting tactics and juggles. And you can also use your super, which if you use your super will deplete your beast gauge. And what the beast gauge then turns into once you're in like beast mode, it's static. It doesn't build up anymore. But when you take damage, the beast gauge becomes smaller and smaller. And when it reaches 0, if a strong enough attack hits you, you go back to human form, and your beast gauge is blocked from use until it replenishes enough. And you replenish it over time or by doing damage and so on. And another side effect from the beast mode is this game has great health, like a lot of tag team fighting games. So while you're in beast mode, you regenerate your gray health as well.
Yeah, I was really impressed by like the number of things. Like, I feel like there's a lot of these games. I know this is the second entry, but even so, like, there's a lot of these games that have like this. I mean, gimmick, right? Where it's like, okay, we've got our unique mechanic for this game that sets us apart from other fighting games. But even compared to like modern fighting games, the versatility of the beast gauge and the beast button is really impressive to me. Where it feels like, I don't know, you can play a game like what's a good example? You could play Marvel vs. Capcom 3 and have fights where you never use your X factor, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's perfectly feasible is to do games where it's like that just never really comes up for you. If you're playing someone who's at all a challenge to you, I mean, I guess if it's a complete curb stomp you wouldn't, but I feel like 90% of games the beast gauge is not just something you use, but something that ends up being part of what decides how the match goes.
Yeah, because you get a lot. You can deal a lot of damage in one go, in one good juggle, or even one good hit if it's a powerful attack. It seems like a lot of characters here subscribe to the Paul school of special deleting like half of your health bar.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you can have a pretty bad time if you beast mode and the opponent just hits you on the recovery, or just wins the neutral, and your beast mode just depletes. It's gone, like you wasted it, and that's a really bad feeling. Um, and it can happen, and it happened to us a few times. Um,
Mm-hmm.
there is a thing where you do get to keep the beast gauge between rounds. So like if you're in beast form and the round ends and you go to the next round, you're still in beast form. So that like gauges, um, it stays as it is between the rounds. So if you, for example, get kicked out of beast mode at the end of a round by your opponent, then you start the next round not only without your beast gauge, but you have to wait until it recovers until you can use it again.
Mm-hmm.
And when you can use it again, you can use it, when it's half full. But that just means that well, I'm going to use it now immediately, which means it's going to get depleted much faster because if I take damage, it gets lower. So if I use it with the gauge is half full, I don't have as much versatility. So there's a lot of, I think like usually on mid to high level play, at least from what I'm like can assume from like our sessions, is that when you decide to use it is probably the like big decision that decides the match, kind of like even more so than a bad burst, in Guilty Gear or Blaze Blue.
Mm-hmm. But not to a degree that it feels like too gimmicky or too unfair. Like you still can totally beat someone who uses their gauge smarter than you if you beat them in other elements of the game. I'm really impressed by the way they balanced it.
Yeah, because you can also, like, if you're still in human form, you can definitely kick the person out of beast mode. You just have less margin for error because if you mess up, you can get punished more severely than if your opponent was in human form. But you can still do it. It's not like, it's not like X Factor, to go back to that, where you're just, oh god, like I'm gonna get just overwhelmed and like run over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And I think it was one of the elements where also the other way this can go is when a mechanic is that prevalent, you can feel kind of lost by its depth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that happened either, right? Like I certainly wouldn't say that I managed to tap the well of the strategy in Bloody Roar 2. It's not like, well, why would I go back to that game? I've mastered it. No, 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 no. I have not. But I did feel like I could make use of the beast gauge without it, like, and it would have an effect on my game, but like it wasn't necessarily make or break. Again, I'm just saying they balanced it really well and its effect on gameplay and how intuitive it was to use while still having depth. I just was very impressed by that mechanic.
It's really interesting like how easy to understand the mechanic is and how neatly it fits into everything. Like you said, like it feels like a modern fighting game. It doesn't feel like it's from the late '90s. And I'm kind of thinking about Blaze Blue, and like I think Beast button here in Blaze Roar like worked very similarly in Blaze Roar 1, but let's just assume this was like an iteration and they add more stuff. Like this was two attempts to get to this point, and think about how many attempts it took Blaze Blue to get to figure out what to do with their burst. Like that was like every
Mm-hmm.
game changing the burst and the guard mechanics completely because they weren't sure what to do exactly.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge of these games, and I think, I mean, um to Blaze Blue's defense a little bit. Blaze Blue is certainly a more mechanically complex game. Like, part of Blaze Blue's problem is that they're balancing that against the number of other mechanics and also character-specific mechanics they're already dealing with. Whereas Bloody Roar 2 is not like crazy simple, but like, this isn't like, oh man, every character has like 5 unique gauges, right?
Yeah. It's definitely has less systems going for it. I just find it like interesting how they managed to nail this, especially for being a shmup studio for most part. Like I find all that very interesting.
For sure.
Um, and like I said, like the biggest thing about this is you play like old like I think from all the old fighting games, I think the ones that probably play the best from the PS1 era still are probably Tekken and Virtua Fighter. Like that's probably the closest. But even going back to the old ones from that, it's pretty rough, and this felt really smooth. So again, it seems really easy to go back to. I wonder what hasn't been remastered or re-released or something.
Well, I mean, I have a guess, which is
Well, I have it.
whoever's involved with it, which is,
Yeah,
yeah, the studio aiding is not, just doesn't seem to have the kind of pull to make something like that happen.
yeah. But in any case, that's enough of us saying how amazing the mechanics are. What about the cast? So we're not going to talk about the story because the story is basically, if you've seen X-Men, that's the story, except replace mutants with zoanthropes or whatever. It's basically that. But yeah, we had a diverse cast. We played with the 2 unlockable characters, so I think that put the entire set of characters to like 11. I think.
I think
Um,
that's right. Yeah.
yeah. So how do you feel about the cast?
Um, I guess mixed, to be honest. Um, I liked some characters. I liked their move lists decently, but there are definitely a number of characters that felt very. I don't know. We had Bushu Zima, who's like the chameleon, who just seemed like a weird character that appealed to no one. There's Jenny the Bat, who I don't appreciate the way she's rendered. um, and then like a lot of these characters just felt very similar, I think, in a way that I found a little disappointing. The art design, like I think the graphics look good for a PS1 game, but a lot of the designs don't feel super inspired to me.
I think definitely the human forms suffer from 90s shonen anime fighting game. Like
Mm-hmm.
even like the main character and female leads, they just feel like, yeah, you can find the equivalent of these and in a lot of anime fighters or of that era.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think the beast forms are probably the things that stick out. But even though we said that this is, this is like actually a 2D fighting game disguised in a 3D environment, it does have that issue with 3D fighting games where you don't really appreciate the nuance between the characters until you've spent more time with them. Like kind of like Tekken, when you first play Tekken, everybody kind of feels similar unless they have some very outlandish moveset.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely did feel like I had an easier time moving around with certain characters than others. Like with Sheena, I just could not connect, or with Long slash Shenlong, I just could not figure out how to play.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with um, Alice
The
and
rabbit.
yeah, no, she's
The
the only one who.
rabbit.
Yeah,
Sorry, you're right.
yeah, she's the only one who gets the nice beast mode. But I think like Alice and Hugo were pretty fine for me.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then I didn't have any issues with playing Jenny in terms of controlling her, whereas you couldn't figure out how the inputs were. So I think there's some nuance there, but I
Mm-hmm.
definitely can see on the surface level. It has that 3D fighting game problem where unless they have some ridiculously different stance, the first impression is going to be I can't really tell the differences between them. Like I had that
Mm-hmm.
when heck, even when I played the Real Life 5, that's a recent fighting game. When I started playing that for the first time, I was like, I can't really tell what the difference between these characters is until I was 6 hours in or something.
Sure, sure. I feel like yeah, you're right that it is easier to tell the difference between these characters. I had some fun with Stun the Insect, which I think is a terrible name. Um but he's basically the grappler character, and this game's interpretation of a grappler I found pretty interesting, where he has a lot of what we usually call projectile throws, right? Like hit throws, where they
Mm-hmm.
don't break guard. It's just it does a grapple move upon hit, and so you do like a couple of punches, and then turn it into like grabbing them out of the air and slamming them into the ground, which was kind of fun.
Yeah, it reminded me a lot of Bullet from Blaze Blue.
Sure, sure. Less. Well, I guess he seemed less shitty, but I guess I don't know.
I think he's less shitty. Um, but I do think that at least when you turn into beast mode, the characters the beast button is a thing that has very unique looking moves.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, like this, they have slashes for most part, but how they do the slashes is very different. And pressing circle with the rabbit looked very different from pressing circle with the leopard.
For sure, for sure. Or a lot of, and it's also interesting to see sort of the way they use the beast modes to sort of exaggerate their personality, right? Where
Mm-hmm.
like you can see that like for example with Sheena, you can tell that Sheena is supposed to have this like very practical, ruthless style, but it's still just martial arts. And then she turns into a leopard, and it really gets emphasized a lot more. Or with Bakuru the mole, who's a ninja, it's like very subdued ninja movements, and then turns into a mole and goes for some more like overtly like tricky movements in a way that I think is a really good expression of the character's personality.
Yeah, I think they really want you to press that beast mode button. They really want you to take advantage of that and just let loose. And I think it also fits with the theming, right? You have these
Mm-hmm.
kind of low key characters that turn into these monstrosities that basically jump they jump on you and rip your neck out as a throw.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for
But
sure.
and then there and then there's some of the super. We haven't really done too many supers, I think, and it's kind of a shame because I prefer to use supers as finishers, but this game does that thing where if you do a super that kills the opponent, it just transitions to the next round before or the match end before the super's animation is over.
Yeah, it doesn't give you any special privileges. We never ended up seeing the end of Alice's super, though from personal experience what it looks like.
Yeah, where she just like curls you up into a ball and just like throws you everywhere. This game also has a ring out mechanic, but I'm not 100% sure whether the ring out is just upon the final hit or
Yeah,
where you
it
can actually
seems.
ring out during the
Well,
match.
given the way it went for us, I feel like it must be the case where it's purely like it's a cosmetic finish where if you hit someone into a wall with the final blow, you get a ring out.
Yeah, I feel like it's like that because almost all the arenas are just square shaped. I think they're different sizes, but like all of them are square shaped with breakable walls. I think
Mm-hmm.
some of them, I think, maybe we haven't played on those stages, but I think there are some that don't have breakable walls, as in like the walls are solid, but they have at least like some breakable options to kick your opponent into the void.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Which looked very funny because the outside of the ring is not super rendered as you might expect, and so it's just kind of like, oh, they just fell and they're just lying on the blackness now.
Yeah, I think their entire budget in terms of how much RAM and just like how much they can display just went onto characters. Because like if you think about it, like Tekken back in the day didn't even have walls. Like it was just like an
Right.
endless void in JPEG.
I mean, the frame rate on this game for a 3D fighter owns. So,
Yeah. And also like a lot of the details on the beast models seems to be like even better than the main characters because I noticed that like on the beast characters, like we don't have the shovel arms that the PS1 models usually have. They actually like render the entire like hand with the fingers and in some of in all the beast modes, which I think is, really damn good.
yeah. Yeah.
Um so yeah, I think we went over most of it. I would really like us to try and figure out a way to play Bloody Roar Extreme. So for those who don't
Mm.
know, this series had like a third game, and then it had this weird spin-off slash re-release of three, which was called Extreme on some platforms, and then something else on other
Yeah.
platforms.
Extreme
Uh,
on Xbox, Primal Fury on GameCube.
I think they are fairly similar. There might be some balance changes, but I think they're fairly similar. And
Mm.
they have a character. So I don't know. I don't think I've actually told you this. When they had a poll with their fans, like which animal form they'd like to see. I
Uh-huh.
think the fans trolled them, and they all like the majority of them voted for penguin, and they were like, well, we can't like put a penguin in, and they had to put a penguin in. So you have this one character who has two beast forms. One is this dingy, tiny little penguin, and the other is like a flaming phoenix.
Huh.
It's pretty funny because he looks like some like fancy prince, Bishonen, pretty boy, and then he turns into like just a penguin. It's not even like like some big buff penguin with I don't know like claws or whatever. It's just like a penguin.
It feels like you should have a reverse zoanthrope in this. You should have someone who's like, like bird the human, and when they hit the button
Oh
they turn
god.
into a person.
So that brings me to the fourth game because the fourth game had some very stupid. The fourth game just like is really bad. It has like some really bad mechanics. It replaced the beast gauge for double health bars. It just plays badly, and I think there was one character who was actually like a human, but then instead of their beast form, they just had like a powered up form or something like that. Like I don't know. Four is
Oh,
really bad. That's why people don't talk about it.
gotcha. Okay. Well, that's unfortunate. Um
Yeah.
I do like honestly, I feel like so this is a really popular podcast, right? We've got listeners around the globe in every major media corporation and company, right?
Yeah.
So Studio Trigger, you're currently making a show called Brand New Animal. You probably would like a fighting game for that. You should contact Aiding and have them make it.
They're probably just gonna contact Bark System Works because they did the Kill la Kill game.
Yeah, but this like Bloody Roar mechanics would translate perfectly into that.
Yeah, but I guess I would I would just prefer a new Bloody Roar to be like a 90s style game complete with the like wild guitar riff soundtrack.
I would too. I'm just trying to figure out what kind of business deal I can actually make happen in the real world.
I think the more reasonable business deal would be for me to earn a lot of money or a lot of credibility in the industry and just pitch that game to somebody eventually. I mean, that's how Nier Automata got made, so maybe.
I guess that's true. That's true.
Maybe in 20 years.
Like, just do a total reboot. Pretend the previous games never happened. Use those characters again. But listen, your story's complete trash, man. You don't need to sequel the story.
I mean, I would just call the first one Bloody Roar Beasterizer because I want to use Beasterizer again because it's so stupid. But then you can that. like yeah, and then it's clear it's a reboot.
Yeah. Or you could just call it The Bloody Roar. That's a classic.
The Bloody Roar, no, or just Bloody Roar (parentheses) whatever year it's released in. That people always love that when games are released like that.
Yeah. Well, you wouldn't put the parentheses on the. You'd have to put that on the wiki page. You just call it Bloody Roar on the game.
Yeah.
It'd be pretty Galaxy Brain to do the parentheses 2020 or 2021 on the cover.
And then you have to put a sequel that's actually pretending as though the previous game had like the proper number, so it would be like you have Bloody Roar 4 and then Bloody Roar and then Bloody Roar 6.
Or you go the Madden route and it's just like every year it's 2022, now we've got Bloody Roar 22.
Oh, sorry, we don't call it Bloody Roar 6, we call it Bloody Roar V. Vi, like V and I.
Yeah, I was gonna say like that. That is really confusing, as if it was Bloody Roar V when it was number 6. I just want them to bring this back. It's good.
It's really fun. Would you play it again? I guess that's like the good question. Would you play this game again if people were like, "Hey, we have a way to play it. Let's go."
Absolutely. Like if there's a local retro game store that opened up near me. If I see a copy of Bloody Roar for a decent price, I will pick it up because I want to rope some friends into it when they hang out. This is good. I like this.
Yeah. I think that's really good. I'm gonna rope in some Discord friends to do that. But yeah, well, 6. When you're not out shopping for used copies of Bloody Roar, where can people find you?
Then I'm probably out shopping for used copies of PS2 Gundam games. But if I'm not doing that, you can find me on Twitter at Sixdettmar, SIXDETTMAR. And you can also find my work at scanlinemedia.com or patreon.com/scanlinemedia.
Okay, well, and you can find me on twitter.com/MDKII. That's MDK Roman numerals 2 or MDKI or whatever. Like, I don't know how we're pronouncing it now. Now I've confused myself. But you can also follow me on twitch.tv/RealSovietBear.
What about MD Key?
MD Key. MD Kai. Oh god, that sounds like a...
Well, it wouldn't be Kai because you'd need an A, wouldn't you?
Yeah, Key, I guess. MD Key. So that would be like a doctor from the Kingdom Hearts universe. That's what it sounds like.
Sure.
I don't know. Key just sounds like a JRPG name to me.
No, I totally hear you.
But yeah, well, thank you all for listening in. And until further notice, aka until more fighting games come out, we're gonna be digging more into the retro ruins of fighting games and finding stuff good and bad.
They call me Yugo the Wolf because I'm downright fierce.
And because you drive a Yugo, like a car.
Actually, I used to. Now I drive a Geo, but they still call me that.
Wait, you used to drive a Yugo?
No.
Okay.
I'm playing along with the bit.
No, sorry. I knew it was sold in the US. So I was like hopeful. But anyway, good night, everybody.
Peace.